everybody. We're going to take a mid-July look at the hurricane season and what's been going on. So we'll start out in the East Pacific. Kind of a little bit faster start than expected out there. Several hurricanes, including when they made landfall here on the coast of Mexico. Although we haven't had anything really long track yet, as I'll show in a minute, this area here off the Baja has had cooler water, kind of limiting things in how far north they can get as we expected, and things have started to quiet down a little bit out there for now. So in the Atlantic, we've had a pretty quiet start. We've had three systems, all tropical storms. We had Andrea up here, and then Barry moving into the Mexico coast, but then kind of the remnants and some of the moisture interacted with low pressure and kind of a MCS over Texas and created this horrible flooding disaster over central Texas that killed a lot of people. So even a weak storm, all that moisture can cause problems. And same thing with Chantal, formed off the East Coast, kind of off a stalled front, moved in here into South Carolina, North Carolina. And then as it stalled and turned, some banding caused heavy flooding over central North Carolina. And we'll look at that in a second. So these just go to show that it doesn't have to be a strong hurricane to cause inland flooding, which is one of the biggest killers in hurricanes. So you got to take every storm seriously. This is the rainfall totals. For Chantal. You could see in the areas of 6 to 8 inches here over central North Carolina. Some areas getting 10, and several of these rivers here in this area broke records that for river height that hadn't been that were set by Hurricane Fran back in 1996, and so much weaker storm obviously, but produced tremendous rainfall. So if we look at kind of what our large scale setup is, things haven't really changed a ton. We still kind of have this neutral look in the Pacific. If we look along the equator here, kind of a mixed areas of warm and cold. In the Atlantic, we still have sort of this warmth up here at high latitudes, also very pronounced in the Pacific. So we still have all this subtropical warmth. We do have the Atlantic main development region is trying to warm up a little bit. We'll look at that more in a second. So that's something to think about as we get towards the peak of the season. Because if we look at the time series, get rid of that. Look at the time series. You can see we basically kind of came down, almost in early June or mid June to below normal. But we've really been coming up, warming up again. The past couple weeks of trade winds have decreased over the Atlantic. And if you look, but one thing to put this in context though is this is from Alex Borum's nice cyclonic weather site, and you can look at basically a running mean, a 15 or 1 year kind of running average of the SST. So you can kind of put it in context to see, 2023, 2024, we had this crazy warmth out in the Atlantic, and really just a huge drop off this winter and spring with the increased trades over the Atlantic. And so even though we're recovering now, kind of back up maybe to where we were a month or two ago, it's still nothing like what we saw last year. So maybe we recover to something like the 2021 or 2022 levels, and those are kind of two decent analogs for this hurricane season. But at this point, it doesn't look like we're gonna have anything near the record values that we saw in the last year or two. But part of the reason for the warming is that we've had weaker trade winds over the Atlantic, and it looks like that may continue. These are zonal wind anomalies. So basically, where you see red, that means winds are unusually weak, or westerly anomalies. So that reduces the trade winds. So both here and in the Canary Current region. So we should see continued warming of this sort of warm ammo horseshoe, so-called. So we may be getting a little bit more favorable of an SST pattern as we get toward the peak of the season. So we'll see if that's enough to sort of, it probably won't fully reverse the trend, but maybe give the Atlantic a little bit of a boost. Some of the seasonal outlooks have been updated. CSU reduced theirs a little bit, and we'll talk about some of the hostile factors in a minute. One of the other big controls is ENSO, El Nino, La Nina. We're still in that neutral mode. You can kind of see that here. This is the kind of the subsurface anomalies. So we sort of had this, these big cool anomalies that went away, but we really haven't gotten any big warm anomalies. We had a little bit of a sort of so-called downwelling Kelvin waves trying to warm things up, but Strong trade winds out over the Pacific have really eaten at that, and so we haven't really gotten any kind of a trend toward El Nino. And if we look at the forecast trade winds out there over the Pacific, you see we have a couple big trade surges. This is anomalous zonal winds. So this is stronger winds out of the east than usual. So those stronger trade winds basically upwell cooler water, and they can basically cause the Pacific to progress towards more of a cool ENSO state, maybe cool neutral or La Nina over time. And so it looks like ENSO should continue to probably be on the cooler side, which would tend to be favorable for the Atlantic. But the Atlantic has still also had some of the issues of its own. If you look at this, is the tropical Atlantic vertical instability. This is the basically a measure of how easy it is for thunderstorms to form. Sort of the temperature profile, temperature and moisture profile with height. And we can see we're basically running well below average. And so that means we've had large-scale sinking and stability. And so that makes it harder for thunderstorms to form. And obviously you need thunderstorms for hurricanes. So not too favorable. And wind shear, basically, in the Caribbean, one of the areas where we do see early season activity, sometimes we've had much stronger upper-level winds than usual out of the west and stronger lower-level winds, the trades. So what that gives you is this strong shear. Shear's running above average there. And that tends to sort of tilt and rip your thunderstorm clouds apart. And so that's not conducive for hurricanes either. So we really haven't seen, we've seen sort of unfavorable conditions. There's the stability again. So ask, is there anything that may flip this as we head deeper into July or August? And the answer is maybe. We have this MJO, Madden-Julian oscillation. We talked about that a little bit before. It's this pulse of convection that transits around the tropics, and it's been pretty weak recently. But we have another pulse kind of developing here in the Eastern Indian Ocean or Western Pacific, and it's going to start making its way around the globe over the next few weeks. And it looks like it could be a pretty strong one. If you look at this in map form, so here the greens are basically areas of upper level divergence, or which favors rising motion, more rainfall, and then the reds or oranges are areas of sinking. So you can see, over the next week or two, it kind of favors the Pacific. So that's probably where you might see any kind of TC activity. But then as we get into let's go back to the mean. So starting again, kind of starting in the Pacific and then moving more into the Eastern Pacific, but then by about week 3 to week 4, so early August, first week or two of August, you start to get more rising motion favored over the Atlantic. It's jumping around on me a little bit, sorry, but we'll look at basically day 45. So you can see that by the end of this period, so as we get into August, you have rising motion over Africa and the Indian Ocean, and now sinking kind of over the East Pacific. And so that tends to be a more favorable configuration for the Atlantic. And part of that is, if you look at the structure of the MJO wave, it has upward motion, obviously, but then behind it brings in those lower level westerlies, so weakening the trade winds, upper level easterlies, so it reduces the shear. So right now over the Atlantic, we were kind of dealing with this part, the downward motion, the sinking, the increased trades, the upper level shear. So as this pulse comes through, we'll be dealing with sort of the opposite and maybe have a more conducive environment for storms to at least try to form. Although early August is still kind of in that transition phase where we may or may not see anything major. We'll see. But if we look at the upper level winds for the East NWF, you can see again the next week or two, not much of the wave development. You kind of have all this outflow from the Pacific convection, a lot of upper level westerlies really across the Atlantic. I doubt you're going to see much in the way of development with that. But then as you go into August, you can see now things start to flip around, and by the time we get to the really first and second week of August, now you have unusually strong or weak upper level winds or anomalous easterlies. So now your upper level winds are becoming more favorable. This tropical upper tropospheric trough, this TUT, is weaker, and so all of that basically means that as we get into August, you'll be favorable for maybe something to try to form out here in the main development region and come up into the Southwest Atlantic where we had those warmer waters. But it's still too early to really say for sure. Certainly over the next couple weeks, anything that would develop is probably going to be here in the West Pacific. Like I said, that's where the MJO will be for now. And then as that comes east, maybe the East Pacific. Best chance of development in the Atlantic would probably be again another stalled front type situation off the East Coast. We saw Chantal did that. That's a pretty common development pathway this time of year. We have very warm water here off the East Coast, like I said, so wouldn't be surprising to see something like that happen. And we'll have to see, again, if the MGO can kind of change these unusually hostile conditions and get things more favorable in the Atlantic. It's pretty typical for the Atlantic to be quiet in June and July, and things typically start ramping up as we head into August. So we'll see how this year goes. And that's it. And stay safe, everyone.